how does everyone really get the proper perspective to understand where they came from? How did that ground you as a leader? And then how do you test that today? I think no matter your role in the organization, you have the responsibility as a leader to create the culture that you want for your peers to experience and for those that you lead. So I think it's incredibly important that all leaders role model the culture and that they want to create. And I think it's also very important to not just role model, but seeking out other leaders to understand what's working, what's different, what they're doing differently, so you can make sure that you're also growing as a leader. That curiosity that leaders can bring to the table is incredibly important. And I think, like, specifically for me, my role is to role model what I expect all of our leaders to do at Banfield. And while we're not 100%, I understand that. And I want, by the way, every leader to be their authentic selves. But like, what I won't negotiate on is culture not being the top priority and treating people very respectfully. And the way I think that can happen is by really creating that two-way dialogue. I like to refer to that as listening at scale, where you can truly invite people into the conversation. And when you can do that, you can hear what's on people's mind. And that's about creating that psychological safe space. And I think all leaders ought to do that. And I think from my standpoint, I want to role model that from the very top, and be clear on my expectations on what it means to be a leader, to bring culture to the forefront for us at Banfield.
Oh, I love that so much, Brian, because I mean, you said so much. You were preaching a mini sermon on a Monday, but I love what you said about, I want people to bring their authentic selves to work as long as it's not impeding upon the culture.
When you can belong and be your authentic self at work, that's powerful. You shouldn't have to, well, I'm going to work and I have to act this way or dress this way or talk this way. There's nothing authentic about that. And I want to bring your authentic self out. Why? Because that's going to let everyone see who you are. And that's going to create a better team dynamic. And when our culture is about expressing yourselves and about inviting that conversation, that creates the authentic workplace. And so we have over 1,000 hospitals. If we can have over 1,000 authentic workplaces, that's powerful, because we're all united on making a better world for pets. And that ties into my culture of listening to people. And when you can listen to people, you're inviting people to be in the conversation, saying what's working, what's not working, and let's talk about it. And Minda, it's not always about getting a yes or giving everyone what they want. I mean, there's been many times in which we've told people we can't do that. But we can say we can't do that. Why? Because we're having the conversation, and having that conversation so powerful. And the final thing I'll just mention is, when you have that authentic conversation with people, that true two-way dialogue, the strategic direction of our organization is actually being driven by our associates' voice, and their voice on terms of what they're hearing from the consumer or client. And that is so powerful for us.
Oh, I love that so much, Brian. I wonder if there's a book in your future. I love that, because you said something else, listening at scale. And I think so many people have a hard time listening at scale.
I lead with empathy, impatience, and impact. Empathy, impatience, and impact. And I'll explain that. That really ties back to my core values as well. What are my core values? Well, it's about impact. I have to make an impact in society. I utilize curiosity, that curiosity on, like, what can we do differently? What can be better? How can I learn more? But also, how can I learn what our consumers and clients want? How can I learn what our associates want and what they're experiencing? And then I'll use empathy again on the value side. So there's a little bit of overlap in terms of how I lead in my values. But what's important about that is it really comes back to me from a perspective standpoint. And this is the advice to your question. How does everyone really get the proper perspective to understand where they came from? How did that ground you as a leader? And then how do you test that today? And like, I think back on where I started, 16 years old, working at Walgreens, stocking shelves, sweeping floors, cashiering, whatever the team asked me to do, I did it. And I remember being on the front lines, and when my voice was included, how that made me feel. When our store's voice was included, when our team's voice was included, how that made us feel. And also when questions or decisions were made on our behalf and we weren't included. So I remember what it feels like to be excluded. So it's one thing to say, I have perspective of working on the front lines and working my way up throughout the ranks at Walgreens that have led me to this job. But if I don't reflect on that and then work on that today to make sure that I stay connected to our front lines and I listen and utilize that curiosity to what's working, what's not working today, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail our team, honestly, and all of our clients and all of our associates. Why? Because I can just, when I was 18, I remember this, but I need to make sure that I'm having that empathetic conversation and I'm having that immersive experience to understand what our people are experiencing today. So my advice is think about the perspective of where you came from and don't lose that. Remember, how did it make you feel? And then how do you test that today? Because the sign of a leader is, yes, it's leading a team through what the adversity and the challenges of today, but having that perspective of where you came from and what your people are experiencing is powerful. And that allows that empathy to really reign true and reign through so you can be a better and more effective leader. My advice is think about the perspective of where you came from and don't lose that. Remember, how did it make you feel? And then how do you test that today? Because the sign of a leader is, yes, it's leading a team through what the adversity and the challenges of today, but having that perspective of where you came from and what your people are experiencing is powerful. And that allows that empathy to really reign true and reign through so you can be a better and more effective leader. And so I think it really comes back to just the values of what you truly value as a person, and understanding what you value as a person is incredibly important to how you lead as a leader. And then that creates that leadership mindset. And mine is empathy, impatience, and impact. And finally, on that point is the impatience is every day we don't deliver, we're letting society down. And so that empathy is, again, where I came from and what our people are experiencing and how can I make a better world for our people. The impatience on, hey, we have to move faster because every day we don't, we're letting society down. And it's all in service of making an impact on society. And I think that's what every leader has to have their responsibility is. It's not about your team. It's not about your organization. It's about impacting society.
Absolutely. And I think that's what, Brian, I think that's what so many leaders miss. And we are all have the capacity to lead. You don't have to have a title to
Exactly.
do that, but the impact, right? We all can be chief impact officers in our
That's right.
organization. That's right.